In this video, I'm going to discuss polygon subcomponents in more detail. Just like NURB surfaces have their own components, so do polygons. However, polygon components vary from NURB surface components. So let's just give those a try. So here's a polygon primitive sphere. If I go from select by object type to select by component type in the status sign, you can take a look at the components. The first one is vertex. And just like a NURB surface, polygons have vertices. So I'll make sure that's activated. They're a little hard to see initially. They're kind of a purplish color, and they sit at the corners of each of the faces. And the faces are the rectangular patches. If I drag a selection box over that area, I can select them and they turn yellow. Now I can transform them, but you're not going to get a result that's as smooth as NURBS. In fact, some of the faces will be stretched out as I move the ones that are selected. But we'll talk about this in more detail when we get to the modeling phase where we build custom surfaces. So just for now, I'm going to undo and not transform those. In any case, those are the vertices, laid at all the corners of the faces. Next component is the third component up here. When you're using a NURB surface, this is actually isoparm, but when you deal with a polygon surface, this is edge. So the third filter up here is select by edge. When I click on the poly, or drag my mouse over the polygon, you'll see that the edges become highlighted. And then you can click on those edges and select them. You can select just one or shift select more than one. Or drag a box over an area and select all the edges. And the edges are simply what they sound like, edges of all the polygon faces. Now again, you can transform these, but it doesn't really give you a good result unless you have something planned out, unless you're going through a very particular modeling step. Same thing, if I try to move them, they'll stretch some of the faces out. So we'll save the transformation for a later video. The third component, though, is right next to edge, and that's face. We've already talked about faces. Again, faces are those square areas, the square patches on the poly surface. As I drag my mouse over the poly surface with faces activated, you'll see that the faces turn red. That indicates that the mouse understands that that particular face is selectable at that particular moment. So if I want to select this face, I can click right now, and it turns green, so that face is selected. I can shift select more than one, or drag a selection box over an entire area. Now this actually brings up an important thing you should be aware of when selecting, and that is you can select from the front of an object all the way through its back. So because I just selected this region of faces, I've actually selected all the way through from the camera view all the way to the back of the object. In fact, if I spin around my camera, you'll see that all those back faces are also selected. So in other words, you can select through the front of an object to the back of an object. You have to be aware of that. Now, luckily, you can deselect. In fact, there's some ways you can do that I haven't discussed, which are important to know. For instance, let's say I want to deselect the back half of these faces. I didn't really want to select them. What you can do is hold your Control key on your keyboard down, and then drag a region box, and that deselects. Again, Control, and drag your region box. You can also hold Control down, and then click on the individual faces to deselect them. There's a couple other key combinations that allow you to add to selections and then to invert selections. So let's say you wanted to add to this selection that's already been made. In other words, I like it, but maybe I want to add these three faces in addition to what I already have selected. What you can do is hold Control and Shift down simultaneously. Control and Shift, and then click on New Faces, or drag a region box once again. So again, Control Shift allows you to add to that pre-existing selection. Now, the other thing you can do is use the Shift key to invert. Let's say I hold the Shift key down and drag a box over the entire sphere. What happens is the selection is inverted. So in other words, the part that was selected becomes deselected. The parts that were not selected become selected. So Shift simply inverts. So just be aware that you can select through the front of an object to its back, but then you do have the power to control your selections with either the Control key to subtract, the Shift key to invert, or Control and Shift simultaneously to add to a selection. And this actually applies to any kind of selection you're making. It's not simply polygon faces, but whatever you need to select inside Maya, you can use that trick. So those are the three main subcomponents you'll deal with when modeling polygon surfaces: the vertex, the edge, and the face or faces. Now you can also get to those component types by the right mouse button menu. If your mouse is over the polygon surface, you'll see that there's vertex right there, there's edge at the top, and there's face there towards the bottom. Now we'll be using this quite a bit as we go through various polygon modeling steps in later videos.